is pretty much equal between home and workplace. But finally, why we did that, first of all, it wasn't about bringing the new voters in. A lot of people thought of that, but it doesn't bring new voters. It's about I would say lifestyle. If people are used to do everything over the internet, and some generation, the younger generation, doesn't want to do things differently, they presume that if they can do all their finances with internet banking, they can deal with the government, with their e-services, evidently they shall be able to vote over the internet as well. It's natural. And this is about answering to that attitude. This is also big change in mind change, the internet voting. You see, there is, for example, there is no, someone would say that there is no privacy if you are not in polling booth and in the closed box. And it's about new thinking, how to think of privacy. The privacy is freedom, is defined as freedom to be able to cast the vote for the people, or for the choice they want to, not the forced going into the voting booth. And also I would say that now we have done that in Estonia, I think it will stay there with forthcoming elections, and fighting with it makes no sense, because it will come one day anyway. It's a matter of how to deal with this challenge. And this is about it. I think we have some time for Q&A.
Did you consider using offline security, I think it's called security tokens, for entering the candidate, and these things generate a code that you enter into your computer and send it off? This would be operating system independent, and it would be a bit more secure than entering the candidate you vote for in the computer directly.
Well, the whole procedure actually of making the selection and encrypting and then digitally signing, you can think of it as an offline operation. First, you have to obtain this application list of candidates securely, make sure that it's all consistent. But the operation of voting is absolutely has nothing to do with the interactions with the server, something like that. So it happens locally.
Yes, but if someone, for example, change your Internet Explorer or something, then he can make you vote for the wrong candidate.
Yes.
And if you enter all the data in an offline device, you're also operating system independent, which is an additional advantage. And these devices do exist.
Yes. Well, it's pretty much impossible to do things offline. It's about internet voting, isn't it?
They are called offline devices, but of course you generate code and you enter the code into the...
you mean some kind of pin calculators and
yes,
stuff like that?
Something like
the authentication with the PKI-based ID card is considered more secure than symmetric cryptography-driven PIN codes.
They're also asymmetric. But
okay. Yes, but there is tool for you know, secure enough, and the ID card.
I understand there were about roughly 10,000 voters who used this possibility. Can you say how many of them actually did that from home with their PC?
Yeah, well,
There was an opportunity to vote from polling stations, I think, in banks or at telecom offices and so on. How many actually
Yes.
did vote from home?
Okay. We don't know numbers because we cannot track who were at home or not. We can look at the statistics from time perspective. It's evident that these guys were voting from home. Okay. There were also special possibilities for voting provided by some open internet points, like in one bank actually provided that opportunity, National Library, and also one telecom operator for the offices.
Are there any particular requirements with respect to the card readers? Do they have to be secure readers? We call them class here, class 3 here in Germany. I don't know whether you have the same classification scheme.
There were no such requirement.
It's a normal card reader?
Yes.
Awesome. Has your system ever been certified by any independent authority with respect to security requirements?
It has
or
been
against any standard in that area?
Yeah, that would be good that we would have some standards, but it was audited, of course, the system, but unfortunately there is no good standard for an internet voting system yet to be compliant with. So it was, the requirements were set, they were agreed upon requirements, and then the audit just made sure that the system corresponds to the requirements set. That's all you can do.
Okay, one question. You were mentioning that your service were running Debian basically, and there was one sentence that said you were relying on few external libraries as possible. Did I get that correctly? Is that only does that only mean closed source third-party libraries or libraries in general?
Well, first of all, it's a stripped down Debian, of course, which means that the minimum which were required was only used from the open source part. And then we had the rest is closed source, so to say, built upon.
So the software is not open source entirely, so, as neither on the server nor on the client side. Is that correct? Because I could think there's a huge discussion going on in Germany on on e-voting, not actually internet voting, and I think on the US as well, where people are arguing that having an open source solution that everyone can look into is being considered more secure than something that is closed source.
I absolutely agree, and this is a tricky question. First of all, what we did is, of course, we opened the source to the third parties for auditing. Anyone who actually came in, we provided them with software, but we required an NDA to be signed. Now, what's the reason is that the same threat I explained before is that someone takes the client part of the software and turns it into virus with and of course, they can do it today because all the specifications are open, the protocols are open, but not just to make the life so easy. We had to make this decision, so we are keeping it semi-open, semi-closed, how you want to do that, defined.
Tere, I'd like to know if you spotted any hacking attempts during the election, and what kind of countermeasures you had in place.
Well, fortunately enough, there weren't any serious attempts. We had a public pilot in January, actually, this year. Yeah, okay. For that case, we actually hired some people to attack the system, and some people also tried themselves. It was okay. I mean, but this time, in official occasion, there weren't any serious attacks. Some tried some URLs and stuff, but it's like nothing. So as I said, we had a team for monitoring all these kind of activities around network, stuff like that, being alert 24 hours a day.
I think there's agreement that there is a threat that somebody could compromise the clients and change the votes there. So what would have been your plan if this actually would have happened?
First of all, you have to prove that this has been happened.
Yeah, you get a machine on forensics and you see there is something on the machine which is actually doing it, it's reproducible and all that.
Yes. And then you have to see how large this attack was, and then you have to decide whether this was influencing the results of the voting or not. And if you decide that it influenced actually, then by the law we have a possibility to say, sorry, we failed with internet voting, go vote manually on Sunday.
Okay, yet now we go a step back, because actually you gave the answer I expected first. We have first to prove that it is this way. So we can end up in a situation where it can perhaps not be proved, it can only be made plausible, because this attack is removing itself smartly from the machine. Don't you think that this could be a real danger if the system is in much more widespread use than it is now?
This is a very interesting topic indeed. This threat, as many of other threats actually, can be, one day it can be true. So the attitude towards this is that there is a lot of issues actually, even in paperwork, there are a lot of people coming saying that it was wrong in that station and this behavior. That's a normal way of solving this kind of complaints if they came in. So you have to prove it, and then there is a national electoral board who actually making decisions. So it's no different from the real world, and this is of course an interesting issue. What we have so far is a well documented list of these kind of threats, which can happen one day, and then we'll see how we solve it. I don't know.
I strongly disagree on this, because you can get a much larger scale as you can ever get with physical voting.
I can't hear.
If you want it.
I just want to say that election fraud has been there with paper votes too. Stuffing ballot boxes is a known issue. So there are procedures to address it.
Exactly. Election fraud is there today. It's solved on a daily basis. Now the internet voting brings some additional threats to it, but I can say that nobody has actually made a security analysis on a paper voting, at least in Estonia. But we have done very, very deep analysis of internet voting threats, and even some countermeasures.